In this week's episode of Superhero Saturday, we are talking about the most popular and probably most overused superpowers in superhero fiction, including super speed, super flight, and super strength. Which superpowers are going to make the top of our list? Keep watching to find out. Hello, super friends, and welcome back to another episode of Superhero Saturday, where we talk about the arts of superheroes, storytelling, and so much more. My name is Annie, and I have been a lifelong lover of superheroes, but I totally know that there are some superpowers that are used way more often than any of the others. Part of this comes from the fact that a lot of the cheap, low-quality superhero characters that are designed out there are all kind of generic copies of the same superhero trope. You know the ones that I'm talking about. The stock characters with the masks and the capes who have basically no character depth whatsoever. Even the ones that get even a little bit more than 2 seconds of thought put into them still sometimes tend to have their problems. I personally can totally tell when some artist, writer, or content creator is trying to create something in the superhero genre without having done any research into it whatsoever. And honestly, so can every other superhero lover out there. I cringed my way through Thunder Force with Octavia Spencer and Melissa McCarthy, and it really wasn't until the second or third of the movie that I realized the problem with it was that it wasn't ringing true because the writers had really done not very much research into the tropes of the superhero genre. They just pulled out whatever seemed most common and kind of threaded it together. Now, I'm not saying that it was all bad. There were a few kind of novel elements of that movie, and I did watch it all the way through. The problem was it just felt like they didn't do their homework before they actually made this movie. However, even the best superhero stories out there really do follow the same kind of style. After all, style is only really established through pattern and predictability. And predictability, of course, leads to popularity. So what are the powers that I think are the most popular and most used superpowers in the superhero genre? Let's find out. Number 7, Super Genius. This one's kind of the bottom of our most popular list because it's usually actually more often reserved for supervillains, but most superhero teams generally do have some super smart person on their team. This is interesting actually because this is one of the only superpowers on the list that is actually existing in real life. There are plenty of real-life super geniuses out there in the world, and while not all of them are fighting crime on weekends with their buddies and dressed in costume, a lot of them are actually working to make the world a better place. Number 6, telekinesis, or other types of mind-moving powers. This one's a little bit more general because there are quite a few different types of telekinetic powers in use in the superhero genre, but a lot of it is for different reasons. For example, one character might be using magic to move things with their mind, and another might be using the sheer force of will, or another might just have some kind of mutant metagene. Either way, characters that have this type of superpower are able to move objects, and sometimes even themselves, with the power of their mind. Number 5, super speed. This one pretty much speaks for itself. Super speed is just the ability to move really fast. And this makes total sense because having super speed would be super helpful in everyday life, not to mention when trying to avert a catastrophe. However, super speed and or super fast reflexes kind of has different applications based on the different characters who are using it. Some run faster than the speed of sound. Others can vibrate their molecules at a certain speed that allows them to pass through solid objects. And still others are simply able to dodge a bullet, literally. Either way, the laws of time and space are a speedster's playthings, and that's why this superpower is pretty common. Number 4, energy blasts. This is another super broad category because a lot of different types of superheroes have different superpower variations on stick out your hand and shoot lightning out of it. Too many superheroes to count have used energy blasts that either emanate from a powerful object or from the force of will or what have you to blast their enemies away from them, even if it's just a laser cannon out of their eyes. One particularly common feature of the energy blast's power type is that the power usually comes from the hero's hands, their palms, or like the center of their forehead for some reason, kind of like a focus of where their gaze is pointed. They use these energy blasts to more or less send the bad guys flying, or even themselves. But most basically, this superpowered character's plan of attack is usually, so anyway, I started blasting. Number 3, flight. We're getting down now to our most popular superpowers, and it's really hard to get to the top of the list without mentioning this one. Thanks mostly in part to the superhero icon Superman, this is one of those character powers that is really, really common, especially in the most basic characterizations of superheroes. In fact, it's one of the first things that people think of when they hear the word superhero. And it's easy to see why. The ability to get from place to place very quickly without the use of traditional transportation would be really beneficial for someone who is looking to fight crime and protect a whole city or even the whole planet. It's also super aesthetic to have a superhero just flying off into the sunset after a victory. And it's also just my personal favorite superpower. Number 2, super strength. This is another absolutely classic superpower that is used time and time again. When beating the bad guys, or stopping a runaway train, or smashing up a doomsday device before it explodes, this superpower just oozes superheroism. It also oozes super destruction, so, you know, whatever. Who wouldn't want to be able to hit a home run that flies all the way out of the park, or be able to take that alarm clock in the morning and chuck it into the sun? This is basically the tank version of superpowers, and most superhero teams have at least one of these characters on their squad. And that's why it is so popular. So this brings us up to the very tippy top of the list. Do you think you know what number 1 is? If you've been watching my channel, you might be able to predict it. That's right, our number 1 most popular superpower is invulnerability, or super durability. That's because without invulnerability, most of the superpowers on this list wouldn't even exist. It would be almost impossible to use those powers without destroying yourself in the process. If you can deadlift a metric ton, but your hands can't handle the weight of that on your body, then you're just not going to be able to use your powers. If you can shoot yourself into the upper atmosphere and your body can't handle the force of that wind on your shoulders, then you're not really going to be able to do much more than be a splat in the sky. It's the same thing with energy blasts or super speed. If you can't physically handle using your superpower, then you're just useless. Therefore, this is the most popular superpower by default, because without it, the other ones simply wouldn't work. All right, so that's the deal. That's the lowdown on the most popular superpowers in use today. But where does that leave us? Are you not allowed to use any of these powers in your own creations because they're too popular? Absolutely not. You can always reuse these elements for your own original characters. The reason that they're used so much is because they're so good. So why shouldn't you be able to use the same good stuff in your own story? Besides, while a character's superpower might be really characteristic of the story you're trying to create, it really isn't the defining feature. And it really doesn't matter that much in the scheme of things. Sure, it's fun to dream about superpowers and their applications in different contexts, but that's not the point of your story. The most important part is the characters themselves and the way that they interact with the plot around them. Even if you've designed the most out there, weird, unused, uncommon superpower set that's ever been seen in the superhero genre, but you only give 2 seconds of thought to the actual character themselves, then you don't have a story, you have a concept. People fall in love with superheroes who have strength of character far more often and more quickly than for superheroes that are two-dimensional bad guy punchers. When you create a character with a compelling personality and build that over time with a great plot, then your audience will want to binge your stuff. And the superpower thing is really just an added bonus. So if you want to use one of these very popular superpowers, or even a combination of them in your own creations, go ahead and do it. Just make sure to build up the character behind it, as well as the powers that take place before it. So what do you think, super friends? Do you agree with this list, or would you put these in a slightly different order? Are there any superpowers that are super duper popular that I'm just totally missing? And which superpowers are your favorites? Go ahead and put those down in the comments below and we'll continue the conversation there. And thanks so much for watching, super friends. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give us a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more superheroic content every single Saturday. You can join the team by following us on social media or supporting us over on Patreon. And if you want to see my own superheroes in action, many of which have powers that are from this list but are still unique and interesting and compelling enough to be worth your time, go on over to our website at www.fearless9.com and you may just pick up some new favorite superheroes. Thanks again for watching, super friends, and we'll see you next week.